Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today I have a sore throat, but I am not going to let that stop me talking about Euthia, Torment of Resurrection, which was sent to me for review by friends of the channel Steamforged Games. We're going to take a look at it to see whether this might be a game system that you are interested in buying into when the new Euthia Cruel Frost crowdfunding campaign goes live on the 2nd of May 2024. There will be a link to that in the video description below. Now, here at Always Bored Never Boring, my reviews generally fall into two categories. Sometimes I make quite technical reviews that run through most of the rules, drilling deep into gameplay mechanisms and how they hinge together. Other times, usually for larger, more complex games, I make reviews discussing some of the most prominent mechanisms while focusing more on what the game achieves and what kind of experience you can have while playing. Guess, if you can, which option I have gone for Euthia. This game is huge. It's a game that wants to create a world, a living, breathing world populated with enemies and allies that you can explore and interact with in many different ways. Fighting, mining, trading and training. The box states the playtime is 30 to 120 minutes. At first I scoffed. That's more accurate as the time required to set up the game rather than to play it. But then I noticed, that playing time is per player. Yes, this is an epic game, and as it is for up to 4 players, you could be looking at games in the 6 to 8 hour range. This is not a filler, this is the main event, the only event, the game you set aside a day to play, to sink into the vast world of adventure so you can enjoy your time there. No speedruns allowed. The box is gigantic and stuffed with components. Just look at all this stuff. There are 6 playable characters, all with their own character boards, tracking tokens and upgrade tiles. Hundreds of additional tiles for resources you can acquire, items you can buy and rewards you can win. Over 70 map tiles, all gorgeously illustrated, and hundreds of game cards. And don't forget the miniatures. Not as many as you might expect in a game of this type, but not so few that you're going to feel shortchanged. This is an embarrassment of riches for a game that wants to wow you, to create a spectacle on your tabletop. And looking at all this stuff, I think you're going to have one of 2 reactions. There will be people who will immediately want to dive in, to see how all these components are going to combine to create an adventure and tell stories that rival the greatest legends. But there will be others who look at this mess of content and immediately check out. I personally tend to prefer more streamlined games. If you look at some of my favourite titles, Hero Quest, Dark Souls, Space Hulk, Space Crusade, Horrified, they all have a compact core of mechanisms that make them immediate, at times almost visceral experiences. An overabundance of tokens and cards and fiddly rules tends to take me out of the game. It's about wanting to play the game, not the rules. About seeing through the components and immersing yourself in the world they represent. There are exceptions to that, games that are so good that even fiddly rules and bloated content can't get in the way of the fun. The question is Euthia one of those exceptions? I suppose I should stop waffling and find out. Euthia is a vast RPG-style overland fantasy adventure game. Think Mage Knight or Runebound rather than Descent. It can accommodate from 1 to 4 players and has solo, co-op and competitive game modes. Although I personally feel like it was designed with competitive gameplay in mind, and then the alternative playstyles were bolted onto the core competitive framework. The recommended age is 14+, but experienced younger gamers should be able to play just fine, as despite the grand presentation and many little rules, the core gameplay is relatively straightforward. One of the things I was quite relieved to see is that the game is scenario based, and there is no campaign. In other words, you set up an adventure, play to its conclusion, and then put everything back in the box ready to reset for the next time. It seems that these days most games want to be campaign based, but finding space in your gaming calendar for all those campaigns isn't easy. So it is a blessing to see a game that offers self-contained one-shot adventures, with replayable scenarios that accommodate different playstyles, player counts, and time constraints. Have a few hours to spare and want to play something competitive? Then set up the Hunt scenario, which the designers claim should play in around 30 minutes per player. Have a whole day to kill and want to play a challenging co-op? Then run through Into the Abyss, which should play in around 70 minutes per player. You may lose that sense of progression, of emerging narrative, of developing a character's personality over countless challenges, but it does make it easier to fit in a game, and does give you more freedom to have different types of experiences within the game system, using different characters each time. The scenario you select will of course dictate what will happen on your journey and what you need to do to win. The recommended first scenario is a simple hunt, in which a deluge of monsters swarm the region and you are tasked with tracking them down and eradicating them. Other available scenarios are very different. You may have to defend a church from invading monsters, travel the continent to make it back home, run errands for the local lord, seal an abyss as it spews out enemies, save a crystal golem from a mind control spell, or slay a mighty dragon. I would say it's all in a day's work for a hero, but there is a lot more than a day's work here. Speaking of heroes, there are 6 to choose from, each represented with a lovely miniature that has a simple wash to make the details pop. They are a pretty stereotypical bunch, dwarves, warriors and wizards, but they are an interesting and varied crew, with each offering different styles of play and tactical choices. Be warned, these are oversized miniatures. They are very nicely done, but if you like to use your miniatures in other miniatures agnostic game systems, I don't think you will find much use for these, although I suppose they could be used as statue terrain pieces. Conversely, the elemental miniatures, which are beautifully sculpted, are undersized busts used to draw attention to the locations of these monstrous creatures, and again, they probably aren't going to be much use in any other game system. In addition to your hero miniature, you need a boatload of additional material to run a character. You have your character board, a double-sided A4 sheet explaining all of your unique special abilities, a stack of upgrade tokens, dozens of bookkeeping tokens to chart your activities throughout the game, and even your own set of gorgeous custom dice. It's an intimidating amount of stuff and an incredible table hog. And unfortunately, organising all that is just the start of the mammoth task of setting up your game. There are 5 sets of map tiles numbered 1 through 5, and each set contains fixed tiles, encounter tiles, scenario tiles, and regular tiles. For any given scenario there is a chart telling you how many of each type of tile you need to randomly draw from each of the 5 sets of tiles, combining them to create the stack of tiles you will draw from as you explore the map. Then you have to shuffle item tiles from 3 different types of trading settlement and draw 4 of each to create the opening offer on the trading board. Then you have to sort monsters by type, shuffle various other decks of cards, prepare any scenario specific decks and tokens, and keep other tracking tokens within easy reach. The image you are seeing now is the table set up for a regular hunt adventure, but I only set up 1 hero board. For this competitive adventure, you would need to find space for up to 3 more character boards and tokens. But if you can get past that hurdle, and some people won't, the game is awesome. The aim is to explore the world, trade, mine for resources, find treasures, kill monsters and complete side quests. All of that stuff will earn you reputation. The game continues for a fixed number of rounds or until the final objective has been completed, at which point everyone tots up their reputation, scoring extra reputation for the gold, items and upgrades they have acquired. The player with the highest reputation has become a true legend and wins the game. So, ultimately, it's a game about points. But more importantly, it's a game about doing stuff. The harder you push, the more you explore, the more you fight, the more you get involved in every aspect of the game, the more you achieve and the greater your story becomes. I think the closest approximation I can think of is Mage Knight, a game that I absolutely love and which offers a similarly deep experience exploring a world. However, Mage Knight is very slow and methodical, combat can drag out, and it can take an achingly long time just to travel between locations. For me, Euthia improves on all the parts of Mage Knight that can bog down a game. The game itself can still run long, but the gameplay is smooth and almost effortless. At the heart of it is a beautiful action point system that may be one of the best I've ever seen. At the start of each round, heroes get 3 action tokens. Each one of these has a movement value on the top and a specific type of action on the bottom. And when you use a token, you can either cash it in for the movement value or for the action. So you have move 1 space or minor location for resources, move 2 spaces or trade, and move 3 spaces or fight a monster. This is just lovely and offers real flexibility in how you approach each turn and make the most efficient use of your actions. Even better, if you finish your turn and you have any tokens left, you can store one in your 4th action slot. That means next turn you will have 4 action tokens to play with. You can plan ahead, but the tokens still give you the ability to adapt to changing situations with ease, and you never feel like you don't have anything you can do. It flows really nicely too. For example, we have Melder here, our fire wizard, who is chilling out at the church. On the start of his turn, he decides to spend his trade token to move 2 spaces. After moving 1 space, he has reached the edge of the map, so he must immediately draw map tiles until there are no unexplored edges next to his space. We have revealed a couple of elementals. They affect all the adjacent spaces in a variety of ways depending on their type. They may heal you, hurt you, or modify your dice rolls in combat. We're going to ignore them for now because we have spotted the glint of treasure. We move our 2nd space to reach the treasure. Note, we have reached the edge of the map again, so we should draw another map tile at this point, but for the sake of this example, let's focus on the treasure. As a free action, we place one of our hero tokens on the board to indicate the space has been looted and nobody else can claim treasure from this area, and then we can take the top pile from the corresponding treasure stack. We have found a leaky net, which we can use as a first strike ability in combat to weaken an opponent. It's a throwing weapon as indicated by the little axe on the tile, and fortunately, on our character sheet, we have a slot with the corresponding axe symbol so we can equip this item. Perhaps not the fabulous riches we had hoped for, but something useful. Now we still have 2 action tokens left, so let's continue. We are going to use our mining token to gain 1 additional movement, and we are going to advance into the space with the monster, because killing that monster will earn us reputation, money, and other bonuses. Oh, and we must remember to keep expanding the map as we reach an edge space. You are only allowed to enter a space with a monster if you have a combat token available, which we do, so we spend this token to fight. One of our opponents will take the top card of the relevant monster deck, and it is a giant spider. Of course, what fantasy game is complete without a giant spider? I will talk more about combat in a moment, but let's assume we beat the spider. We get all the rewards listed on the monster card, all the loot from the map space, and we get to place one of our hero tokens to mark that the monster has been slain and the area cleared of loot. Not a bad turn. We have revealed a large portion of the map, found some treasure, killed a monster, and used all 3 of our action tokens. But of course, we don't just spend our turns looting treasure and killing the local wildlife. This isn't Tomb Raider. Sometimes we will meet NPCs. Here's one in an adjacent space. This is an emissary. For each type of NPC there is a stack of encounter cards representing side quests, of which 2 are revealed at any one time. As a free action, if you are in the same space, you can complete one or both of the encounter cards if you meet the requirements, and then at the end of your turn you will draw replacement encounter cards for that NPC. For example, here we have a side quest to deliver 2 healing potions to the emissary and a side quest to liberate a mining space. Liberating a space means killing a monster there, and this is something you will often need to do as monsters tend to lurk in important locations. For example, this lovely homely place with the brightly lit windows is an alchemist's. You can trade with an alchemist, but not with a vile beast stalking the shadows outside. In this case, there is a level 1 monster here that we will need to clear out of the place so we can trade. Fortunately, we don't need to go into the fight blind. Even though we don't know exactly what monster is hiding here, we do know from looking at the back of the top card in the level 1 monster deck, it will be a monster with 3 to 5 wounds that will inflict from 1 to 3 wounds on us for each successful strike. I guess we gain this information listening to the local gossip. The monster doesn't sound particularly threatening, so let's assume we move into the space. It's time for combat. Monsters are automated in solo games, but when playing in a group, one of your opponents will control the monster. They reveal the card to see what you are facing. It's a dragonfly. The values at the top of the card tell us it has 3 wounds, and the controller for the monster gets to draw 1 silver monster card representing additional abilities the monster has, 1 chaos token used to play monster cards, and 1 Gar token which heroes and monsters use to modify their combat dice rolls. At the start of the combat, the hero has a chance to use a first strike item or ability. Our leaky net is a first strike item. We can tell by the lightning bolt in the top left, but let's assume we make an attack with that and fail the roll. We then go into the standard combat sequence where the hero can heal, the monster attacks, the hero can heal again, and then the hero attacks. This sequence repeats until someone is victorious. For this example, the monster only has access to a single silver monster card. More powerful gold monster cards are also available, and sometimes a player can build up a hand of as many as 5 of these cards. The card is Enhancement, which must be played before rolling any dice, as indicated by the symbol in the top left. Our opponent spends a Chaos token to use the card, and because they only have one enhancement card, they use the top ability, which will cause 1 additional wound if the Dragonfly's final combat score is 6 or more. If they had 2 identical enhancement cards, they could have spent 1 Chaos token and discarded both cards for the more powerful bottom ability, which reduces the hero's combat value by 2 and will inflict 2 wounds if the Dragonfly's combat score is 8 or more. So, they activate the enhancement. They now roll the combat dice and score a 6 and a 2, a total of 8. The Dragonfly has a Guard token, which lets you pick 1 dice, re-roll it and add 2 to the score. Let's say our opponent re-rolls the 2. It's now a 3, and because the Guard token also adds 2, the final combat score is 6 plus 3 plus 2, which is 11. Maths is fun. But our wizard isn't happy about this. We play a Guard token of our own on the 6. This lets us re-roll the 6 and minus 2 from the result. The 6 becomes a 2, and that means the Dragonfly's final combat score is 2 plus 3 plus 2 minus 2, which is 5. Looking at the Dragonfly card, we can see a final score of 5 to 7 inflicts just 1 wound on Melder, and because the Dragonfly didn't score at least 6, its bonus enhancement card doesn't trigger. What a waste of a card. With that done, our wizard can retaliate. We only have 1 weapon, a Staff of Fire. Let's say we roll our dice, then use a Guard token to re-roll the lowest result. The Dragonfly doesn't have any more Guard tokens, but even if it did, it isn't allowed to use them on a hero's attack. So we end up with a score of 6 plus 6 plus 2, which is 14. However, the Dragonfly has a special ability on the bottom of its card, which reduces a hero's combat score by 4, so we only get 10. We look at the Staff of Fire and see that we are very lucky. A score of 10 or more inflicts 3 wounds, and that is enough to kill the Dragonfly with a single strike. The combat ends, and Melder will get 2 reputation and a silver monster card if his current reputation is 15 or less. After all, great heroes who have already gained a lot of reputation aren't going to impress anyone by fighting a little old Dragonfly. And don't worry if a monster ever gets the better of you. Your body is returned to the local church where you are resurrected, ready to continue, with just a minor blemish on your reputation for the trouble. And that's the basics of combat, although there are some additional frills such as She's intervention and the Hope dice. Basically, whenever a monster rolls high or a hero rolls low, the value of the Hope dice will increase, and throughout the combat the hero can spend points from the Hope dice to gain additional advantages. It's a really neat concept, stopping heroes from getting absolutely steamrolled just because the monster got lucky a few times and rolled high on attacks. Additionally, as the game progresses, heroes will have access to more abilities and items, and they will face tougher monsters with access to more silver and gold monster cards, so combats can become quite protracted. However, I have never found them boring, and with so many ways to mitigate your dice rolls, it never feels like you are relying entirely on luck to see you through. Clever use of all your options is essential. But anyway, we have killed the Dragonfly and liberated the Alchemist. Rather than placing one of our regular hero tokens, we place one of our trading tokens. This indicates we cleared out the monster and established a good trading relationship with the Alchemist here. We are now free to trade with the Alchemist, and to do this, we will have to use our trade token. And trading will allow us to buy items particular to the Alchemist, sell items, heal, or perform actions that will improve our hero, such as training new abilities. But, because we liberated the space, we get additional perks. From now on, every time any other hero visits this particular Alchemist to trade, they will also have to pay us 1 gold. Another type of action is mining. These nearby mountains look rich in natural resources, so let's go stake a claim there. We move to the area and then we use our mining token. We draw a natural resource from the mountain stack and we have found some ore of some description. If we sell this, we will get 3 gold and 1 reputation. We place one of our mining tokens on this space. This not only means we cannot mine here again, as each hero can only ever mine a space once, It also means that any other hero who mines here must first pay us 1 gold before they can place their own mining token. And the ore we mined goes into one of the sack spaces on our character sheet. You will have noticed by now there is a very strong race element to the game. There are significant benefits for getting out into the world and doing stuff. Being the first to explore a region or fight a monster comes with extra risk, but you are also well rewarded for it. Doing anything will often earn you reputation. This is recorded on the reputation tracker, and there are little bookmarks along this track. When you reach a bookmark, it means that the next time you trade you can reveal any upgrades from your upgrade stack that have a reputation value equal to or less than your current reputation. Here we can reveal 2 upgrades with a reputation value of 2, but because they have the same number, we can only keep 1. Do we want to be able to teleport around the board, or do we want to be able to get better deals at shops? Let's say we decide we want to teleport. Who doesn't want to bamf? We will have to pay 1 gold to train this ability for use, but we have another problem. All of the ability slots on the left side of our character board have a cost printed on them, which means they are currently locked. If we want to equip this ability, we must also pay the cost for the slot, using money or an elemental essence extracted from one of those elementals we have seen wandering around the place. Unlock a slot, and there we go. Now, once per turn, we can teleport 1 space or move to any portal on the map. We won't need to use as many action tokens for movement, and we can get even more done in any turn. And at this point you know the core gameplay elements of Euthia, but there is so much more. Small subsystems that add texture and decisions to every interaction, but which are in themselves still brilliantly simple in their execution. For example, I absolutely adore the way encumbrance is handled here. Every character has spaces on their character sheet for items in their 2 hands, 4 or 5 abilities, and then 7 slots for things they can wear. Additionally, they have 3 sack slots for holding additional items or a monster's head if they feel like keeping a trophy. But let's say we have decided to equip this lovely suit of armour. It's very cool, but also very heavy, as indicated by the sack icon with a -2 modifier. When we equip the armour, our health and maximum health increase by 5, but we must block out 2 of our sack slots, so we can't carry as much. But ho, what's this? A magic ring. This has a sack icon with a +1 modifier, which means when we equip it, we can regain a blocked sack slot. I think that's just brilliantly simple, and a wonderful, easily understandable way to abstract the concept of weight limitations. You can never have less than 0 or more than 3 sack slots, but you can get special items that modify a sack slot. Our wizard is probably going to get a lot of scrolls, so we're going to buy this scroll pack. This goes on one of the sack slots, and now we can use that 1 slot to hold up to 3 scrolls. Great stuff. Another wonderful element of upgrading and improving your character is attaching elements to gem slots. Each gem type offers a different kind of bonus. For example, we can attach up to 2 opals to this ring, and once per turn, when we activate them, each one will heal 1 of our wounds. And there's loads of little details like this in the game, because Euthia is creating a very detailed world to explore, and it does it really quite brilliantly. Although, not perfectly. The sheer scope of what the game intends to achieve means most in-game tokens and cards are packed with symbols which can seem utterly baffling at first. For your first few games, you will need to constantly refer to the 32-page appendix, which exists only to explain what every single symbol, ability and tile in the game actually does. This will invariably drag the pace of the game down until you have started to internalise what this alien iconography means. Additionally, while the game caters for solo, co-op and competitive games for up to 4 players, I wasn't particularly enamoured with solo play. The game feels better when there is more going on within it, when there are other heroes exploring the region and trying to get to the good stuff before you do. 2 players seems solid, as when one player is taking their turn, the other player will be in charge of any monsters they face. Games with more players really make the world come to life, but you balance that with a longer playtime and phases where 1 or more players may be twiddling their thumbs waiting to get back into the action. And I feel it has to be said, Euthia does create a world, but it is a somewhat familiar world. A world of dragons and dwarves, barbarians, kobolds, goblins, orcs, giant spiders and the dreaded legions of the undead. The things you find in the world are unlikely to feel new, and whether that is a positive or negative for players is entirely personal. Fortunately, the ways in which you interact with these common elements does feel new. The core mechanisms of the game feel fresh and exciting. If the aim was to recreate the feeling of playing a role-playing video game, I think Euthia does an incredible job. However, as compelling as the game is, as much as I want to explore the world of Euthia, I am not as driven to do so as I should be. The amount of work in organising all the components and setting up even the most simple scenario dampens my enthusiasm considerably. This is a game that requires my full 6' by 4' gaming table due to the ungodly sprawl of components, and there is a real time sink in sorting, shuffling and arranging all the cards, tokens and map tiles for each game. To be able to get it to the table on a more consistent basis, I really need to come up with a decent organisation system. Even then, setting up a scenario is a bit of a chore and will take some time, which is the sort of thing that will make me pick a different game to play. And that really is a shame, because once Euthia is on the table, it has a smooth, simple flow to the gameplay that makes it an absolute joy. It plays long, but never devolves into tedium, and particularly in the competitive game, there is always a reason to be invested in what other players are doing. Euthia is also incredibly generous. Certainly it's a big box full of hundreds of components, but that isn't what makes it generous. The generosity comes from the breadth and depth of the experiences it offers. Varied heroes in varied scenarios, each of which is played across a randomised map offering different encounters and side quests. When you set up a scenario, you will know your destination, but your journey will be different every time you play. And that is just with the core set. There is already a huge expansion in the form of Fierce Powers and Crawling Shadows, and then there is the forthcoming Cruel Frost expansion. Remember, this isn't a campaign-based game. You don't have to play through Torment of Resurrection and the Fierce Powers and Crawling Shadows expansion just to get started with Cruel Frost. This is a system that lets you pick your poison, to mix and match your experiences, because ultimately that's what Euthia is, an experience, and each expansion is just another massive box of options for you to tailor that experience. More scenarios, more enemies, more heroes, more stories, and more adventures. If you are looking for an event, a game with the potential to swallow your whole day, then Euthia may be it. But I do recommend, if you are hosting, get the game set up before your guests arrive. They will thank you for it. The core game and the 2 expansions will be available during the Kickstarter campaign, which goes live on the 2nd of May 2024. So if this sounds like something you could sink your teeth into, follow the link to the campaign page in the video description below to find out more. And as always, if you like the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.